I'll just quickly review what we covered in class 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, because we did it well.
But it's nice to remind ourselves so we know what we're on, because when this class is finished, you're only ever going to remain with an imprint of the things that were repeated over and over and over in your mind. So I'm repeating for that. So in class 1 we learned what Vinaya, the meaning of Vinaya, and how it's to do with taming of your mind, abandoning the 7 of the 10 misdeeds along with their friends. So it's really to control your senses, to stop your body from grabbing that next thing that will cause you suffering, from wanting to punch another or hurt another. So you tame your body, your speech, but obviously also the thing that motivates it, which is your mind. And they are summarized in the 10 misdeeds. We also learned from Jason Karpa that the 3 extraordinary trainings, the trainings that give you extraordinary results, like the body and mind of a Buddha, are very linked with this idea of taming your mind through ethics, Vinaya. That without attained morality, without a mind, body and speech that is tamed, without the ethics of caring for another as if they were you, you cannot have the stillness required for shamatha, for understanding how the world is coming at you is an illusion. Without stilling the waters of your mind, you cannot have results in meditation. And without results in meditation, you can't see the ultimate nature of the world as it is. And this very important link that even in the 1400s, Jason Karpa said was even forgotten amongst Buddhist traditions of the time, is what makes Vinaya such an important part of the Buddhist teachings, is discipline. And it's been difficult for me to teach discipline because I'd have to say in the last 2 years, I've been trying this stuff for about 17 years. In the last 2 years, I've tried to be a little bit more flexible with my mind, and it's really sometimes a disaster because you let go the control of something you've been disciplining and then it goes haywire. So it's been very interesting for me to have to teach Vinaya because it means that to reassert my effort on my own discipline. All this comes down to the idea of vowed morality. So it's one thing to do an action in your everyday lives. It's a complete other thing to have focus and attention on it like a solemn promise around that same thing. That action has a complete different result on the basis of Vinaya. So that was class 1. Then in class 2, we looked at a commentary on the Vinaya Sutra that is extensive. It talks about the summary of the Buddha's lives, why Vinaya is the highest instruction of the Buddha, some meaning from the root text, etc. But we actually got to the actual commentary on all the Vinaya scriptures. And this we then summarized on class 3 with Tsongkhapa's commentary on the Duwadol, which is the Tibetans use this compendium, this collective of all Vinaya, and he was going to explain all of it in these 6 parts, and we got halfway through. We got to part 3, I think. Let's have a look. So in class 4, we covered the nature of a vow, like what is it made out of? What is a vow? When you make a promise, why is that a thing? What's it made out of? And we had this problem with it. You know, there's some people said it was one thing or another. I'll summarize it. What are the categories? How can you divide all this vowed morality, all the important things to promise in order to turn your life from samsara to a nirvanic experience, from seeing the world through suffering eyes to seeing the world through peace? What are the promises, the collection of promises that would clear the road for you to get to nirvana or enlightenment? So they're categorized in 8 different types. We covered those. And then we started going through each of the 8 types of vowed morality, prati, moksha, individual freedom vows. And that's what we did in class 4. We went the basic nature, there's two arguments, that it's either a physical thing or a mental thing. Do you remember that? The 8 types of vows were the one-day's vow, the layperson's vow, the novice, layman's, laywoman's, novice monk, novice nun, intermediate nun, and then fully ordained monk, fully ordained nun. And then we began one by one. The one-day vows cover these things. You abstain from sexual activity, from stealing, from killing humans or fetus, lying, etc., etc. Then the lifetime lay woman's vows and lay man's vows are a condensed version of that, plus doing the refuge practices, the advices on refuge, which are, I promise to hold on to my sexual energy, for example, so not be sexual, in order to address desire, but also with this idea of refuge behind it. Refuge meaning, actually I'll ask you, what would the refuge advices mean? Refuge in what? Comments?
Refuge advices?
Yeah. When you take layperson's vows, layman or laywoman's vows, you also take up the advices on taking refuge. What do people take refuge in? If you're a Buddhist, you are taking refuge, right? So what do we take refuge in? Jewels.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Cool. It's in the 3 jewels. In the place you're in, right? You take refuge in the Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. Now that's just blah blah words for us to get used to blah blah words. What does it really mean when life gets tough and difficult, or when life gets blissful and lovely, or when life is neutral? Regardless of what you are doing, if you're walking around the planet, taking refuge means as things occur, you're rejecting something, there's some horrible thing in your life. You take refuge. The only thing that will protect you is understanding where that came from and how it came to be. This is what wisdom means, understanding the nature of reality, the emptiness of the situation, if you like, and how that emptiness is filled up with your karmic projection. Understanding that in depth, as it's happening to you, understanding that the thing is empty, and that you're filling the empty screen with some part of you, and that's why the experience feels that way. Does it mean that the experience is fake? No, it means it's your reality, but somebody else's reality might be different. Understanding that is taking refuge. Thinking that the harm is coming from that to you is not taking refuge. So whenever you take these vows and you go through your day thinking, I will stop killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. You do it with an idea of that things are empty and that you are creating your reality. Does that make sense? So whenever you take lifetime layman's vows or laywoman's vows, you also take up the advices on refuge, because it puts wisdom in the activity rather than thinking you're doing the activity and it's going to have some external cause separate from you, the actor of the activity. Reviewing. Then in class 4 still we did just a summary of the vows, because I don't know them for a novice monk or nun. Your monk will know them now. Yeah? Blessings to your monk for taking vows. But we know they're grouped in these 3 areas. There are 4 vows on the root vows. They also come from the 10 non-virtues, or the daytime vows, 6 secondary vows, and 3 transgressional vows. So as you can see, we're still in the commentary from Tsongkhapa describing each of the 8 individual vows. In class 5, we went a little further. We went, okay, we've got those, and the 6th type of vows were intermediate nuns vows. Why do they get extra vows? Does anybody remember the Dharma Ruma? Why a female person taking vows to turn their samsara into nirvana would have an extra 2 years worth of vows, an extra 12 vows? Do you remember the Dharma Ruma? Because it's not confirmed in any scripture, but it's the Gos. Yeah, it's just in case a person deciding to renounce this world and saying, okay, I want to become a fully ordained nun, so she doesn't show a pregnant tummy. They give 2 years to keep these intermediate vows, and then okay, you're not pregnant, you can take it. It's not a confirmed thing, but it makes some kind of sense, because otherwise it felt unfair to me, unless they unless the female energy has much more special qualities that us guys don't have, and therefore they can work on those and we can't. It's also a possibility. And then we roughly describe the 5 groups of fully ordained monks and nuns. If you want to see them in detail, when Geshe Michael, our holy teacher from this place, taught these, it wasn't commonplace to discuss these things. They're still secret things. But over the years, different people from different traditions have been posting monks and nuns vows online. I found a bunch recently. So if you're really interested, you can go and see. But I think there is something in keeping them private and keeping them secret until it's time, and then communing with the people that are giving you your vows, your teacher, and having a special instruction from them about them. Because there's not just the words, but there's a verbal transmission going on when these vows turn into something in you. And that's what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about who can take vows, who can give vows, etc. So today's class, I thought I'd remind you that we're talking about vows again. So I made that little video for you. Just to remember that the purpose of vows is to make your world better and better and perfect. That's our job, right? To make it better. So any questions so far before I dive into today's topic is the 10 non-virtues. You think you know them until you study. You think Buddhists are all relaxed around the vowed morality, much nicer than all the other restrictive religions. Yeah, and you do some research online and you find that people's opinions about Buddhist commitments are pretty relaxed. Like, who thinks that it's pretty relaxed? Who doesn't think it's pretty relaxed? You think it's strict, the Buddhist path? Okay. More strict than other paths? Less strict than other paths? When you study, it's actually just as strict as other paths. It took me by surprise the deeper I searched. Jason Kappa from the Gelugpa lineage, the head of our lineage, if you like, from the 1400s, was a master at Benaya, and so he wrote a book called the Lamrim Chemo, the Steps on the Path, and the Great Book on the Steps on the Path. And in there, there's a chapter where he describes details in the vows that might not be known. So it's my uncomfortable duty today to tell you what Buddhists think about vow morality. So we're going to cover the 10 non-virtues in a negative way. We're going to cover them in the correlations that might not seem clear to us, but are clear to a Buddha. And this is the purpose of Vinaya, is to understand what we can't understand, because I think I'm going to win if I punch you. And the Buddha says, no, punching her won't make you win. It'll make more people punch you, which will make you punch more people, which will make them punch you, and then you will punch each other and start hurling things at each other until there's no end to that cycle. That cycle is called samsara. Enlightened mind says there's a different way to act in the world, and it's not what might naturally come to us, which is to defend by punching, or to take what you want. There's a completely different way. So the vows are individual freedom vows, because those that take them up find freedom from this cycle. Yeah? So it's my uncomfortable duty to cover them for you in details. I remember when I took this class, and then when I took a part of this class a second time, it is the biggest imprint of a negative experience with my teacher ever. Yeah? I was so dark inside. I was so upset that he would be saying these things, that they would be in the Buddhist teaching. Right? That's outrageous. It was interesting because over time, if I take the Buddhist path to be a path, and I believe that the grand majority, what they say, it's going to work for me, but these two things that don't fit my life or my lifestyle or my view are just really pissing me off, and I think that's a problem, then, I have to face, do I really want to fix my world, or do I not want to fix my world? So if I'm going to learn this path, I think it's my duty, and I've acted on this way from learning this and many other things of a Buddhist path, to do what the Buddha said, which was learn the stuff. First of all, before you decide on anything, learn the stuff. Secondly, do critical analysis on it through meditation. Do the debate analysis. Where do you stand? Why is that logical? Why is that? He said you must do. And you must do it unbiasedly, right? And then you've got to do the continual critical evaluation of your realization by seeing if what you realized is congruent with the world, right? So those three things are an important thing to do in a Buddhist path. So I'm going to share with you some things about the 10 non-virtues that you might not know of. Yeah, I didn't when they first came out. What else do I need to tell you about that? Okay, do you remember, do people know the rules of karma, what makes a karmic path, a strong karmic path? Do you remember the Tibetan Shi? Sampa? Chorwa? Tartuk? No? The object towards which you act in a karma, Shi, the object, has something to do with how strong your experience, your result from the karma will be. Yeah? So if you're acting towards something that you don't value too much versus your mother, the result of that action will be vastly different. Does that make sense? That's Shi. Sampa is all the mental stuff that goes on in relation to an action that we do. So this is just a summary on karma. I didn't intend to go there, but I guess we'll do it. And it's to do with recognition. Yes, it is my mum. Yeah? So let's say, for example, harming somebody. If you think it's your mum underneath the bed covers and you're bashing it, whatever is under the bed covers, it's different to thinking it's pillows or your annoying brother and you're bashing it. Does that make sense? So that in your mind, that there's a heightened sense about the object. Recognition that it was your mum or your brother when you take out the sheets. It's like, oh, it was my mum. That changes the action and the result of the action. Does that make sense? That's one of the sampa part, the mental part. The other one is intention, like how strong is your intention? Did you mistakenly hit that thing under the covers, or are you trying to bash it so it hurts it? Yeah? There was a third part. That's right. How afflicted are you? How enraged are you? How overwhelmed with mistaken view are you? Is that what's overwhelming your action? Would you do that if you're under no mental duress, if you like? Does that make sense?
It's part of the third?
It's part of the second. Yeah, all the thinking stuff. Do you recognize the object to be what you think it is? Are you afflicted as you're doing it? And is your intention evil? Is it dark? Is it to harm? Those things are all mental. Then the third part is you must actually carry out the act. You must be punching it. Do the stuff. And the last part is, the Tartuk part is, you've completed it. You've done it. You've seen it. You've somehow rejoiced, or you've recognized in your mind, you've captured that what you intended to do, you did. The example they use in scripture is if you tried to kill someone and you hurt each other and you and you stabbed them, but you died before they died. You didn't get a full karmic path. Your karma is not so powerful because you're not sure that they died. Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay, so you need to know that about all these 10 non-virtues. And like I said, we're going to talk about them from the negative point of view, because these are things we must stop doing, because at some level, if they're in the top 10, we are doing them all the time, or some aspect of them all the time, or the impulse for them all the time. So for example, let's say you didn't act, but you weren't sure what was under the covers. It could have been pillows, and you had some doubt, then it wouldn't be a stronger result as if you had full recognition that it was your mum. Does that make sense? Make sense to everyone? Yeah, cool. So here we go. We're talking about these because if we're talking about Vinaya, the vows that one takes for a lifetime, it makes no sense to talk about them as if they're a collection of things that are given to you and somehow through luck or whatever you're going to get a result out of them. Vowed morality has to do with hurting others or stopping from hurting others. And these top 10 are the things we mostly stop and in most of the vows first, before you get finer and finer and finer at the 100, 200, 300 something vows you end up taking as a fully ordained monk or nun. That make sense? Yeah. Great. Here we go. Actually, the other way, sorry, I digress. The other way to think about these things, which was beautiful the first time I heard it, and I've gotten a bit used to it now and I forget about it. We go around the world thinking we know how to manipulate the world to try and get what we want or avoid getting what we don't want. We all do, you really do. You got on a bus, you got on a train, or you went to a job, or you said something to somebody because you thought you were going to get an outcome. To stop getting what we don't want to get, to stop getting in our lives what we don't want to get, understanding this detail of vowed morality might give us a hint about the actions we must do to stop those things from occurring. So for me, the example at the time was Geshe Michael was talking about when he was teaching this. He goes, if you want to stop certain things in your life, like a yelling boss, and I'm like, oh my God, he's reading my mind. I've got the most aggressive business partner who behaved like my boss. I saw as my boss. It was this whole, he is the pain of my existence. If you want to stop that, then you understand the true causes of having an aggressive being yelling at you all the time, shouting orders. And then you stop those causes and that thing should stop. Because yelling back is actually producing more of a yelling boss. He said that over and over, and every time he said it, it sent chills down my spine because all I wanted was to get rid of him, that yelling thing. Yeah, and if I could prove it on that one, it meant that all the other advices this Holy Geshe Michael was giving me, I could use to remove all the other annoying things in my life. Yeah. So most of you know that story of this guy called Gary, yeah, who became my first Dharma experiment, which is what we must do with this information. You get told that a certain annoying thing in your planet, in your world, in your existence comes from specific behaviors or attitudes, like mostly the 10 non-virtues and subtle versions of those as well. Then stopping those with wisdom will stop that annoying thing, that yelling boss. And unless you try it, if you just come here and get it and go, oh, that's interesting, and don't do anything about it, the world will continue to be what it is. Something was hurtful so much between me and my business partner that it forced me to try. My desperate measure was to listen to some silly monk, yeah, who had no idea about life, you know, in my mind, yeah. But I was so desperate that I would listen to this bizarre, in what seemed to be a reversed, upside down answer to my problem, because it was much easier to get another job or punch him or yell back or whatever, defend myself, not be such a wimp. That all those things were much easier and faster, and I thought they were going to get me my result. not what Holy Geshe Michael was telling me to do, which was, if you want to stop a yelling boss, you must stop yelling. Shut up, it's not my fault. Yeah, it was him, not me. It was so upside down. So applying that to the 10 and testing one of them, the one that hurts you the most, I thought I'd go for the biggest one, which was Gary. And within 3 months, it stopped completely. It stopped completely for, in a way that was confirming to me that it only stopped because of what I did, not because of what I had been doing. Yeah. So this is the top 10 things humans do to each other. It's particularly interesting that we're talking about killing today, right? With the conflicts going on in our world. So I'm only going to talk about the things that are not obvious. So obviously killing, right? The act of killing is a problem. If karma is you experience the result of your intention and your action, and those shi, sampa, etc. are a full karma, then any of those things will produce, any action will produce a result equal to the action. So killing will produce a result equal to the killing. So what they are referring to from refraining when they say stop killing, in the Buddhist scriptures it says stop killing human life, a human fetus. It includes suicide, enticing other people to kill for you, and active service in the army or supporting an army entering and bombing other people, etc. They say you collect the same karma if you're in the back trenches as you're in the front trenches, because your intention of being and doing that activity is to harm people, is to harm things. So that's the stuff that's included. Later on, I'm going to give you what I call the correlations that come from Tsongkhapa that say, what is your world look like because of this karma of killing, of taking life? Yeah. The interesting thing to say here about suicide, why would you think suicide would be a problem from a Buddhist point of view? Why would taking your own life?
It's harming a sentient being.
And what's the problem with harming a sentient being?
A being that has the potential to.
Yeah, so the answer is
achieve
that,
Buddha.
yeah, there's a being, i.e. you have a human mind and body, and that thing has the potential to become enlightened, has the potential to free itself from the bonds of samsaric existence, and if it did, it would serve all these other beings as well. So you've just stopped, that you've watched yourself create a karma that stopped the fruition of a being to its perfect nature, if you will. Yeah, so that's one of those things. Interestingly, with all of these also, there is some desertion, right? Desertion, is that a word? Discernment. Because in the Jakata tales, you know, the Buddha offered his own life to the tiger, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that suicide? Yeah, like he saw a tigress with babies in the Jakata tales, and she was about to harm the babies because she was so hungry that he threw himself down and she ate him, and so did the cubs, which became those first 5 disciples, right? So what's he talking about? You can't kill humans, but then and suicide's included, and then he goes ahead and in a previous life commits suicide. What's the story?
Wisdom?
Tell me.
Well, how is that committing suicide?
He threw himself at the tigress so she could eat him.
Yeah, but he was killed.
He threw himself.
Yeah, but wouldn't suicide be more like killing yourself than something killing you?
Oh, he dropped from a cliff into where the lioness was, the tigress was. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. That's the. I wasn't there, but that's the story. So it's not like he came across a tigress and go, oh no, please eat me. Like, he let it happen. He let his human life be taken by an animal. He jumped from a cliff. What he did is he had a disciple with him. They noticed the hungry tigress. I think someone, if you remember the Jakata tale, help me, but I think this is what it is. He was in some cliff with a disciple talking pre-Buddha life, in a previous life. And he noticed that this tigress was so hungry and so weak, she was about to eat her own cubs, and they saw it together. So he asked his disciple to go and fetch something, like go and fetch water or look for food or something, in the hope that he wouldn't see him killing himself. And he then threw himself down and gave his body to the tigers. That's in the Paul Nama Buddha, right? That's the Jakarta story. So what's the story? Don't kill. Suicide includes that. It's the first of the worst karmas. Why would he do that?
To protect other lives.
Yeah, but his answer was that the human life is likely to get enlightened.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is doing it. I mean, you still do it, but you have some kind of a powerful intention behind it, a wisdom behind it, that
Right.
you're doing it. You're giving. He gave his self, his body, not only for the cubs to survive, but also for a mother not to be killing her own children, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
He had
And
no attachment to the outcome.
exactly. So he also could see, he was at an advanced level of seeing what his future lives could be like, what the result of this specific action would be, and therefore was able to bend, if you like, this rule because he could see what it would end up like. Great. Wisdom. Yeah.
So
Awesome.
he knew he was going to become a Buddha at that point.
He had removed. He knew he couldn't be seeing this as a suffering that was self-existent. He knew that the highest service at this moment for both the tigress, the cubs, her karma, the disciple seeing this story, telling the story, would result in what he needed to result. He also, one could argue, knew that it was also his karma to be taken by this. He also knew that this would be there. That's
Right, like, so for him to see this was just like part of his,
Yeah.
like every human being.
But for those of us who cannot see our future, our reality, the interconnectedness, the answer is no. Yeah? But the point I'm trying to make is you can't take on these 10 non-virtues as rules laid down by a self-existent being that tells you if you do it, you're naughty. This is not what it's saying. It's saying the responsibility for the experience of this universe is yours in your creation. And if you want it to be a suffering world, continue with this 10. If you want to transform it, stop these 10 for you. Yeah? But they're not so black and white as to, because 90% is intention. 90% of the karma is your intention. And the more wisdom you have, the more you're clear about your intention. Let's go on to the next question. We'll review this. Stealing is defined as taken as what's not given. It includes, in Tsongkhapa's commentary, shady business deals, cheating on paying local municipalities and such, including your taxes, and avoiding paying your bills, etc. So I always have problems with this one, doing my taxes, because and I think I really do want to cheat it. Like, the impulse is there. Like, I can spend the money better than you. And then my tax accountant is usually very nice in reminding me that if it's the law to logically claim within a certain amount, then I'm not really breaking or cheating. I'm just acting within the acceptable levels of that law, and that makes me always feel like, oh, good, I deserve what I got back. Not, I'm gonna get something that's probably naughty, you know. So I don't actively go and cheat, but I feel uncomfortable about getting a return or something. That's just my personal thing. But it's interesting that at the time, he mentions things like taxes, right? Things like, not, if it's due to somebody, why should you have it? Yeah. So if it's in the top 10, it's something we have all the time, right? So the impulse to keep something, we think we're going to hold on to that something. And that's a mistaken view. The Buddha here is saying that's not how you keep something. Just like the only way to get rid of a yelling boss is not to yell back. The world that we live in and the actions we take in the world is an upside down world. That's why we keep perpetuating the same problems. So it makes some kind of sense from my ignorant, dumb mind that the answer should be an upside down answer. Yeah? And as uncomfortable as it feels to turn around and go against the current, yeah, because it makes sense. The only way I'm going to keep my money is don't give it to the taxman. You know, that makes sense to me. So then I've just planted an awareness in my mind of keeping what didn't belong to me, and that must ripen into a result. We'll talk about the results later. And this one was one that I argued so much, being a gay man. I argued so much with Geshe Michael. Here is the big long list about what constitutes sexual misconduct. Adultery, obviously, that's the primary one. Wrong parts, right? Which include your hand, yeah, the anus, or the mouth, right? And I'm like, that's a problem. And then ordained people, homosexuality, although they didn't define it, someone too young, someone menstruating, someone pregnant, recently pregnant, I think within a month. Someone related, and they gave an example of someone within like a sixth cousin or something. If you see that it's hurting them, if they have a sexual illness, an improper place includes an altar room, a shrine, next to your teacher. During the day, problem, yeah, etc. So I got really riled up about this. They can't stop me from having sex. They didn't. But then you get to the root of it. Why would one of the top 10 things that one should control, tame, duwa, be sexual behavior, and so much of it? Because that doesn't leave much more, right? And that's not the whole list. There's a big list. So I had to grapple with this personally, and I remember debating with my teacher, which is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. What is it about sexual activity? Do you think that is the primary thing that would keep us in samsara?
Keeps you in that desire realm.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So what's the desire realm defined as? The desire for food and sex, right? So just this sexual urge and desire. I think there's something I didn't put in here about there's also an improper amount of times that you can have sex. Like if you have it more than 5, if you in one day, that's a problem, you know. So obviously they're not being restrictive, and the Dalai Lama has come out openly and spoken that, you know, within cultural context, etc., it's trying to address this very innate human need to obsess around desirable objects, and sex is the biggest primordial desire drive that we have, and it's going to be one of the hardest things to tame because it's primordial. It's the thing that drives the continuation of race, you know, and it's pleasurable. I mean, it's filled with pleasure of this world, etc. So it doesn't mean that you're a naughty person, that any of these things, killing, stealing, sexual activity that's improper, is improper in the sense that it will keep you stuck in a samsaric existence. And if you want to orbit out of the cyclic existence, you need powerful fuel to get out of here. Another explanation, besides it keeps you perpetuating in desire, is that it drains you of certain energies that you might need in order to do certain practices, etc. Yeah? So that's the 3 of body. Yeah?
What was the improper place?
In here, like a shrine room near Indian monastery grounds, like that. Yeah. And why would that be a problem? is there something wrong with this location for sex?
Only in your own mind.
Only in your own mind. So in your mind, you are associating images of enlightened beings. You're trying to have a trajectory of your consciousness to an enlightened state, right? And you are, if you're connecting that with unhealthy sexual desire that is driven by want and craving and so on, then by association you are reducing your object is very high in here, enlightenment. And you're now adding base human desire to it.
So you could even argue that your altar should be in your bedroom?
You could argue that. I do. Or argue that. That's true. Yeah. Comments? You guys let me off easy. That's nice. No, that's a difficult thing to take up, because you think, well, I disagree with that. Well, okay, disagree, Hector, and stay in samsara. So, or observe your sexual urges, or observe your tendency to want to take other people's stuff, or observe your tendency to wish to hurt someone. Now, I may not go and kill someone, but I can tell you I have rejection urges, impulses that wish to harm people. We all do. That's why it's amongst this list. Buddhism is saying if you tame those, your world transforms. It's easy to say. You tell me today you didn't have the impulse to punch somebody in the head or yell at somebody or tell them to stop, or they're aggressing you, or they're not, they're a pain in the ass or whatever. You tell me that today you didn't have some tendency to want some stuff that maybe didn't belong to you, or keep some stuff, etc. and etc. So then the next four are of speech, right? So here is the list of the ones that go on the line. Defined as difficult definition, giving somebody the wrong impression, a misimpression of what you see, hear, and what you know in your mind. To me, that describes every job you're required to do in any job at all. You're supposed to give somebody a misimpression, right? Like, no, buy my product, it will really help you, whatever it is that we're selling. It also, social media is a perfect example of, let me show you my smiling picture of me traveling up in the Himalayas. I'm not telling you about how revolting the smell was, or how I got diarrhea every second hour, or, but look at me successfully traveling the Himalayas. We're forever subtly wanting to give people impressions about ourselves that are not congruent to what we know. Even in the way we communicate to each other. This is a really difficult thing to do. The premise is, if you stop doing these to a finite level, if you really pay attention, this is the essence of vowed morality. If you pay attention to any of these human impulses and you reduce them, your levels of happiness, of nirvana-ishness, increase. That's the premise here. Difficult to swallow. What else do I have to tell you about lying? Someone, yeah?
What about keeping silent?
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, that's a good start.
Even if they get the wrong impression, though.
This is a good question. Sometimes, I confess, I know that when I'm silent, particularly around business talk, okay, I only really ever had the balls a couple of times to tell people in business really what I thought. Yeah? Very few times. I remember a year and a half ago, I was with a company called Mass Mutual, and they asked me something about how can we increase our earnings? How can we get, why is it that it keeps failing, whatever? And I had to ask them, do you really want to know the answer, or do you want me to tell you what every other consultant has ever told you? Which is work harder, work smarter. I can tell you that stuff. And I just had the guts to actually ask them whether they really wanted to know. And I remember distinctly half the room knew what the hell I was talking about. because they looked down. They
Yeah.
didn't want to know.
Ah,
Right.
But the guy that asked me did want to know. He goes, actually, no, I want to know. And I'm like, well, be generous. Stop taking from other people. Be more abundant. Da 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 da. It's in your mind. Where else does it come from? And we had a whole discussion that was Dharma-ish. But that's a sidetrack. That's saying that so many other times I was silent to let them keep on the impression that I knew they were having on. And in a way, that's deceitful. However, it's difficult. What happens if you're in the Second World War and someone gives you a little Jewish girl and you put her in the basement and someone comes knocking at the door and says, do you have a little Jewish girl here? What do you say?
No.
But you're lying.
No.
But you're also protecting.
Correct, right? So it's not, that's what I'm trying to get. It's not so black and white for you to say, oh, the Buddha said I better not lie. Yeah, there she is. That's not what you do. It's situational, and it's situational to your experience of reality, which is always shifting, right? So, I mean, the Jains at the time where Buddhism was growing, there was, is it the Jain religion, the Jains?
yeah.
They believed that hardly anybody, if anybody, could ever get enlightened. Impossible to get enlightened. Because A, you can't walk around the planet without killing something. You can't walk around without deceiving someone. Like, it's so impossible. It seemed so impossible to interact with this world without doing these things that of course you're going to maintain a samsaric existence of cycles of suffering and fruition and suffering, fruition and suffering. Yeah? Because we misunderstand where things come from. They believe it's hardly impossible to get enlightened. And Buddhism says no, it's actually possible. It's an upward spiral, but it's not like simple. It's not easy. Yeah, because it's, for example, the four things that make up a great karma is something that the Buddhism thought was fundamental. The law of karma was fundamental to why you could get enlightened. Because if you didn't know you're squashing bugs as you're walking around, you can't possibly collect a full karma to ripen those results, right? So the same for lying. If 90% of it is your intention, and your intention is protect life, reduce harm, which is the summary of all these things, then not only can you say that you have a part of you that is not telling the truth, but a much greater part of you is saving a life. So which do you collect? Which of the two do you collect?
Both.
Thank you.
Both, yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay. Which one is more powerful? If you remember, we had object, the mental process that goes about recognition of an object. Which one is more powerful?
Protecting us.
Protecting life. It's simple. Yeah. But then you've got to know this and you've got to play with this, and this is not the way we are educated. In the Western world, why do we do good? Why do you not lie? Why do you not cheat on your taxes?
So you get in trouble.
Because you get in trouble, right? If you don't get in trouble for the law, which is fear, right? You think something outside of you is controlling your reality, right? Or, you know, and I was talking to David today, I posted something about the Middle East war. I was so hurting today about it. I posted something that I thought was true to my heart. But I didn't want to alienate anybody, and I wanted to make sure it was nicely worded and whatever. And I had this, still have this fear that someone's going to say, but you upset me with what you wrote. Like I was going to get in trouble for saying what I thought. You know, there's still some aspect that we believe that something outside of us is going to come and say, you naughty person. I mean, for me growing up, that was a wrathful God. Because, you know, Buddhism says there's no such thing as someone outside of you. You stop doing bad deeds not because a big bearded being is taking notes and going to hit you over the head later, but because it harms you. Because you are the recorder of your experience, and therefore you are the projector of your reality. And then that also, in relation to all these 10, that also addresses the problem of me being really nice Buddhist practitioner here on the cushion, and in private doing something completely different. In Buddhism, that makes no difference because you are the perceiver, the recorder, you are the thing collecting the seeds that will ripen into your results. My experience of other moralities, like the one that mostly we're moral in this society because A, we're going to get in trouble with God, B, we're going to get in trouble with the law, C, we might get some societal pressure. Yeah, I think that's mostly why we're ethical to whatever levels we are in our day-to-day. But then that also allows that in private, you don't have to be congruent with that. Buddhism sort of smashes that in the face and says, you actually have to be congruent with, because you're the one, you're there and you're in private. So you can't have this split personality. That makes it tougher. That makes it truer. That makes it your responsibility, which is awesome. Let's see what else we talk about. Divisive talk, oh my God. You know, I was struggling to teach this class because it is the list of the top 10, and I do all these top 10 to some degree, like we all do. And saying things intended to alienate people from each other, whether the thing you're saying is true or false. If your intention, if the thing behind you, behind the words you're using, has some flavor that says she's going to like me more than before, she's going to like me more than him because I said something, or if she already doesn't like him, she's going to like him less because I just told her something about animal. If you have that awareness, then that is what you're planning, whether it's a truth or not. So the idea of dividing people, because we think that's how we get close to someone. We think we get close to someone by pushing them away from them, come to me. Because that's what it seems like in this separated world. The more friends I have, the happier I am, which means you mustn't have any friends over there. You know? In fact, it's the opposite. So we'll talk about what correlations this has later on. Let's see if I tell you. It's so subtle though. Like if you think about your thoughts or just the use of language between people. I mean, if you've ever worked a day job, a 9 to 5 or any kind of business, we do it all the time as this sense of competition between people we work with. We work in the same company trying to get the benefits for the company, and then we're undermining each other very subtly. The boss is like this, and you know. The worst is I do it about Dharma centers. I mean, my business is Dharma, right? So I'm sitting here and I do it in my mind. And my mind does it. It's a habit. It's like, you know, and I can hear it as it comes out. I'm like, it's incessant in our human nature to do this. Buddhism says, you stop doing that, the road opens up to nirvana. That's what it's saying. Doesn't just to know and not to do doesn't mean you know, by the way. So first you got to know, then you got to grapple in meditation and understand, how does this work? And then you got to test it in real life. Is it working? That can take a long time. So divisive talk is a harsh, subtle thing. Happens all the time. We have it amongst our families. We have it. I mean, I've seen executives in big companies. They have control over thousands of people and millions of dollars, and there is the loaded language in meetings. I mean, you hear it in the UN, and you hear it in large organizations where people can't be outwardly aggressive, and so they are subtly aggressive about dividing each other. And the truth is, we all have this nature. This nature is in us. That's why we are in samsara. And it's not a guilt trip, and it's not like you're evil or anything. It's just what it is. And if we want to stop the results of that, we stop the behavior. Harsh talk. I like this one. I like talking about this one because the intent behind the words is to harm. And you could say the sweetest thing or the deeper swear word, doesn't matter. If the intent is to harm, then it's harsh speech, harsh talk. Yeah, and we'll find the correlations to that. My best friend in Australia and I have language between each other that if a grandma heard it would have a heart attack. But between us, that's not harsh talk. That's actually sweet, deep, caring lullabies between us. Yeah? It really is. I mean, and if any of you know Sam Muglia, yeah, the same. I mean, we have the most disgusting conversations, and it means that there's a level of respect and awareness to each other's intelligence that we use this language to address it. But I couldn't possibly use that language with other people. Yeah, and the same is true of sweet talk. You've been in situations where you've been really kind to somebody, and I totally understand what you mean, and you have this whole subtext in your mind. You can hear your words being sweet, but your subtext is some evil, disgusting rejection. You stupid, such and such is happening in your mind. That's harsh speech. The other thing that I was surprised was it doesn't have to be directed to an animate object. It can be to inanimate objects. So if you stub your toes, and the intention is, like, if it comes from this harshness, this abuse intent, then it's harsh speech.
I don't understand.
If you stub your toe and you're angry and you yell a obscenity aimed at the chair, yeah, you're still the recorder. You're still hearing that evil intent, that anger connected to those words, whether it was a nice word or a bad word. The fact of the matter is that the karma was planted because you witnessed yourself have a rejection, a negative impulse with intent to harm, and it was verbalized. Yeah, you'll hear the correlations, etc. This is the other hard part. So, in saying that using strong language with a best friend is not harsh speech, which you all got, right? You all thought that was really cool, so did I for a long time, until you realize that habituating that language, and then you forget that you've habituated that language, and you are with your grandma, and you forget that this is now normal language for you, it comes out. Seeing the effects of that language on another person is still considered harsh speech, right? So I knew that saying that word in front of my grandma would hurt her. I didn't duwa, I didn't control, I didn't tame my mind, I didn't have control of my mind enough to stop using that word or those sentences with my grandma, because I was so used to doing it with my friend Evan. Yeah? It's still harsh speech. In other words, I still collected the karma because I had the awareness of me saying something harsh, which I knew would be harsh, and I saw her hurt. I collected the karma completely.
Wait, you didn't intend to hurt her.
I know, but I knew at some level that that word would hurt her, and I didn't have control of my language enough to keep that word from her. So it's a lesser karma that if I had intended, so if I'd been angry at her and said, "Oh, grandma, you're a," yeah, if I had intended, that karma would be bigger, absolutely, yeah. I didn't intend, but it's still considered, you collect the karma because you did it. And then this one, idle talk, which is the highest or the most, the biggest waste of talk is reciting your prayers or your mantras without thinking upon their meaning, because it's just blah 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 blah. Typo? Resting? Is that reciting? Yeah.
And the next word?
Prayers. Yeah, it's American. Prayers. Reciting prayers. I did it fast, okay? No. Thank you. With thinking on their meaning. So arguments. Jason Kappa says useless non-Buddhist texts, which means, it doesn't mean you have to be Buddhist, but it means texts that don't get you out of suffering. So he says, wasting your time in books that can't ever solve your real problems, like the newspaper and so on. Useless joking, whining, poor me, complaining, and dharma, blah, blah, blah.
Useless non-Buddhist text, that could be everything but Buddhist text.
Well, I think the idea of Dharma text or Buddhist text is, there can be yogic text, there can be any text that can get you to enlightenment. Yeah, there's this 4 qualities of a text. Can't remember them off the top of my head, which is what's defined as a Buddhist text. It means a book that its subject matter is that will free you from suffering. It has a correlation between how to get you out of suffering. It has some steps or some method in which to do it, and the points in the book relate to each other to give you that result. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's what it's saying. It's saying out of all the possible things you could waste your time on blabbering about, you could be talking about Lady Gaga's latest new video, or you could be talking about
Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is talking about useless non-Buddhist. It's not.
Yeah. Not reading.
Not reading.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
okay.
that still applies.
Okay.
Last 3, and then we'll take a quick break. Yeah, these are in relation to mind. Right? Coveting, which is wishing other people's possessions and their personal qualities. Meaning, and the way Tsongkhapa describes it is, first you have some kind of attachment to the idea of having this thing, whether it's the car or the look or the dress or whatever. You want more of it. You see that someone else has it. You want it, and then you act to get it. Meaning you forget your shame or you forget yourself and you go ahead and get it in an improper way, which is, your career is that. Like we people build careers on that, where I want to be a successful engineer, I want to be a successful such and such. And so you see that if I get those things and I do all these things, and then how much compromising are you willing to do with your entire life in order to get that quality that you think is self-existent in that job or that title. I see it in management all the time. They fight over each other, harming people that they've worked in for 10, 15, 20 years in order to get an extra $5,000, $20,000 in monetary or status. I'm a GM or a VP or something. So this idea of coveting other people's stuff is something that is incessant in us as well. Your will is described as getting pleasure when others don't get what they want or when they fail. And this again is, I know for me, it's constantly there. There is an evil, disgusting quality in us that sees somebody not get what they want. And if we are on a planet where, let's say, I want something, and it would be awesome, my life would be perfect if I got it. I would be so happy if I got this thing. And then to watch someone else who also might want that thing and not get it, and me be happy about that, is the most revolting realization, recognizing that it would bring you nothing but joy. The logic is it must also bring them nothing but joy. So for them not to get it would be hurtful and devastating. Why would I be happy for that? But the truth of the matter is, if I'm honest with myself, it happens all the time. As someone trying a Buddhist path, I get a kind of embarrassment when I see someone else have a beautiful realization, and I know my listening is covered with this. Well, they're probably I want to down them a little bit. It's disgusting. Yeah. And lastly, wrong worldview. And the classic is not believing in the law of karma, past and future lives. But the reason why this is such a powerful one is because it entices you to do all the previous 9s if you don't understand where the world comes from. If you don't have a worldview that says you are responsible for your reality, that the intentions that you act with create your experience of the world you're in. If you don't have this down, the laws of cause and effect of your reality, karma, if fundamentally you don't believe in that, then you're okay to cheat and steal and kill because it's not coming back to you. You're not responsible for the results of that. So then next I'll talk about karmic results and how it's a beautiful detailed list of correlations between what happens if you stop those energies in you, those top 10, what happens if you stop them or reduce them, or worse still, what happens if you don't stop them? What do they cause in your world? And then by reverse engineering, you can say, if I don't want that in my world, I know the ill will, I can work on the ill will and that will remove that in my world. Or I can remove stealing and this would be the result, etc. So it's like this reverse engineering of what Buddhism says creates the suffering in our world. If you don't want any of this list of specific sufferings, look at the correlation and see how it might be that this behavior results in the suffering we're having right now. So take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 9:05.